Robberies have doubled in Brazil because of the World Cup. At least that's what officials are thinking at this point. And the numbers are pretty staggering. If you look at muggings in Rio, the public transit there is experiencing it the most. So the main form of public transport in the metropolis of 12 million doubled over the last year. And they're referring specifically.
This is in Rio, right?
This is in Rio specifically, and they're specifically talking about muggings as well. So they're worried about that. More than 420 incidents were reported in January alone, compared with 195 in the same month a year earlier. So they're worried about this because, first of all, they think that those who are doing the muggings, those who are doing the robberies, have absolutely no fear of officials or authorities coming after them. They feel emboldened because they've seen others do it. There was one story profiled in the Associated Press where, one person was sitting on a bus and there was one young person sitting next to him, someone behind him, and the young person next to him said, "Give me your wallet now, or else the person behind you is going to shoot you." And that's usually a common way of robbing people or mugging people when they're on public transit in Brazil. So authorities are concerned about this because they don't want any bad press leading up to the World Cup. They're banking on 600,000 people traveling to Brazil in order to see the World Cup and, obviously in order to stimulate their economy.
Yeah. Well, then they should crack down on this.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I guess what's going to happen, some of those 600,000 people are going to get robbed. And the willingness of banditos in Brazil to shoot you is significant. So even when they do a crime like that, it says in the story that, like, where a kid will say the guy behind you has a gun and you don't feel the gun and you think they don't have a gun. Mm-hmm. But there have been enough times when people who've resisted have just gotten shot. So it's like standard practice. You're like, yeah, okay, here's my wallet. Right. Then those guys rob that guy, and they just move down the bus and they rob somebody else on the bus.
In front of people, too. Yeah. It's just apparently common, and people are worried about it. Now, the United States and the UK both have issued warnings to travelers, people who are going to Brazil. They're saying that you need to be careful when you're specifically on public transportation in the country.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you that if you go to Rio, don't get on the fucking bus. Mm-hmm. Take a cab. I mean, if you can afford to go to Rio for the World Cup, rent a car, take a cab.
Yeah. Now, I should note, though, they are planning on increasing law enforcement around the time of the World Cup by 20%. So they do plan on cracking down on it. But again, it kind of goes back to the big issue that we talked about on the show previously. There's a huge problem with poverty in Brazil. About 1/3 of their population there is living under poverty. And so if you have poverty and you have a number of people getting away with muggings and robberies, then of course it's going to continue to happen. You kind of have to solve the underlying issue there. You're basically relocating people that are living in favelas. You're not treating them appropriately just because you want to make sure you increase tourism. I mean, people that live there are feeling abused, and I feel like a lot of this is them acting out.
And I'm sure that's true, but on the short term, the way you stop it is with cops.
Right.
Like, you're not going to solve this by the time the World Cup starts on June 12th.
I totally get that.
And the only way you're going to do that is with a bigger police presence. And, with a bigger police presence and a mandate to solve a problem before it embarrasses the country, it just seems like every time there's, like, if you're not careful, that there's a wink where you're saying, do whatever you need to do, which means that there are going to be some police abuses here.
In the first 3 months of the year, the number of muggings reported in the city's marquee Copacabana neighborhood rose nearly 60% from the same period a year earlier. And also, at least half of the 12 World Cup host cities have experienced a recent rise in violent crime. So I think you're right about it, Ben. I think that they need to crack down on this now. But long term, the real issue is the poverty in the country. And if you're starving and you want to feed your family, you will go to extreme measures to make it happen.
And remember, there's been a significant spike in crime in at least half of the 12 World Cup cities, so you can't blame it on Rio. Thank you very much. I didn't know how I was going to get that into the show, but I did it.